Hi everyone, welcome back to Steve's View. Just a few days ago, New York mayoral nominee Zohran Mamdani made headlines around the world after saying that if Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu came to New York, he wanted him arrested. The reaction was immediate. Supporters praised him for taking a moral stand. Critics called it political theater. Legal experts quickly pointed out that a mayor has no authority to arrest a foreign head of government over an international court warrant. For several days, the debate focused on one question: could he actually do it? But politics moves quickly. Now the story has changed. Instead of talking about arresting Netanyahu, Mamdani is encouraging New Yorkers to protest during the United Nations General Assembly in September. At first glance, it may look like a retreat, but politically, it may actually be a smarter strategy, because this controversy was never really about whether Netanyahu would be arrested. It was about sending a political message, and in modern America, the message often matters more than the policy itself. That's why this story deserves a closer look, because what we're seeing is not just another argument over Israel and Gaza. It's a reflection of how American politics itself is changing. Think about what voters traditionally expect from a mayor: keeping streets safe, reducing crime, improving transportation, building housing, managing the city's budget. Foreign policy usually isn't on that list. The American political system was designed with clear divisions of responsibility. Washington handles diplomacy. The president conducts foreign policy. Congress writes federal laws. Cities manage local issues. But modern politics doesn't always follow those traditional boundaries. Today, local politicians are expected to have opinions on almost everything: climate change, immigration, artificial intelligence, Ukraine, China, Israel. Social media has transformed political incentives. A detailed housing proposal may receive limited attention. A dramatic statement about one of the world's most controversial issues can dominate headlines for days. And politicians understand that attention itself has become a form of political power. That's why Mamdani's shift from arrest to protest is so significant. One approach faced major legal barriers. The other does not. A mayor cannot unilaterally arrest a foreign leader over an international dispute, but any politician can encourage supporters to organize rallies and demonstrations. One depends on government authority. The other depends on public mobilization. One could trigger years of legal battles. The other can create immediate political impact. In many ways, protest is a much more practical political tool, not because it has more legal power, but because it is easier to turn into political momentum. Modern politics increasingly rewards actions that generate attention. A large demonstration creates headlines. Cameras arrive. Social media spreads the message. Supporters become energized. Whether government policy actually changes becomes a separate question. And this isn't unique to one party. Republicans organize rallies. Democrats organize marches. Conservatives build grassroots movements. Progressives organize demonstrations. The methods differ, but the political logic is similar. Visibility creates influence, and few places offer more visibility than New York City during the United Nations General Assembly. Every September, world leaders arrive in New York. The President of the United States, foreign prime ministers, European leaders, diplomats from around the world. For a short period, New York becomes the center of global politics, but it also becomes a global media stage. Every speech is covered. Every protest is filmed. Every political message can travel around the world. For ambitious politicians, that opportunity is almost impossible to ignore. A message delivered during UN Week does not just reach local voters. It reaches Washington. It reaches foreign governments. It reaches millions of people who may never vote in New York, but will recognize the politician's name. That is a major change from the past. 20 years ago, local candidates competed mainly for local media attention. Today, one carefully timed statement can become international news within minutes. That's why this story matters. Because the bigger question is not whether Netanyahu will face protests in September. Large demonstrations were already likely. The deeper question is why local politicians increasingly use international conflicts to define their political identity. Why has foreign policy become part of local campaigns? Why do city elections now involve debates over wars happening thousands of miles away? To understand that, we need to look beyond Mamdani himself. We need to understand the changing politics inside the Democratic Party. Every politician has an audience. Not every speech is designed to convince everyone. Sometimes it is designed to energize the people who already support you, and that's exactly what is happening here. Over the past decade, the Democratic Party has changed significantly. The party still includes moderates and traditional liberals, but a younger, more activist-oriented wing has grown stronger. Many of these voters view international issues through the lens of human rights, social justice, and global activism. For them, the war in Gaza is not simply a foreign policy issue, it is a moral issue. They expect politicians to speak clearly, take positions, and show solidarity with people they believe are suffering. Whether someone agrees with that worldview or not, the political reality is clear. Politicians respond to the priorities of their supporters. If a political base demands stronger language and more visible action, leaders adjust their message. That's basic electoral politics. And that's why the shift from arrest to protest makes political sense. An arrest is a legal action. A protest is a political action. One requires institutional authority. The other requires public energy. And campaigns depend heavily on public energy. Think about the timing. The United Nations General Assembly is one of the few moments every year when the world's attention is focused on New York. Journalists from major news organizations are there. Television cameras are everywhere. Any demonstration has the potential to become international news. If a politician wants to send a message, there may be no bigger stage in America. That's why protests during UN Week have become almost a tradition. Climate activists appear. Human rights groups organize events. Supporters of Israel and supporters of Palestinians hold competing demonstrations. Labor unions, religious organizations, and student groups all try to use the moment to amplify their voices. Mamdani is not creating something completely new. He is entering an existing political tradition. The difference is that he is doing so as someone seeking to lead America's largest city. And that raises an important question. Should a mayor actively encourage demonstrations on international issues? Some Americans would say yes. They argue that elected officials have the same right as anyone else to express their values and encourage civic participation. If citizens have the constitutional right to peacefully protest, why shouldn't political leaders support that right? Others see a potential conflict. They argue that a mayor is not only a political figure. A mayor is also responsible for public safety, traffic control, emergency services, police coordination, protecting both protesters and the public. The issue is not whether people have the right to protest. They clearly do. The bigger question is whether elected officials should become organizers of political movements while also being responsible for managing the consequences. Reasonable people can disagree, but this debate reflects a much larger transformation happening across America. Increasingly, politicians at every level are being pulled into national and international controversies. School board elections become debates over national ideology. City council races become arguments about immigration. State elections become battles over cultural issues. Local politics is becoming part of a much larger national conversation. Some people see this as healthy democratic participation. They believe elected officials should speak on issues that matter, even beyond their official responsibilities. Others worry that it distracts governments from solving everyday problems closer to home. Both concerns have merit, but one thing is clear: the incentives of politics are changing. In the past, politicians built reputations by passing laws and delivering results. Today, many build influence by creating moments that capture public attention: a viral video, a powerful slogan, a symbolic gesture, a controversial statement. Sometimes those moments generate more political impact than months of behind-the-scenes policy work. And that may be the biggest lesson from Mamdani's strategic shift. Notice what disappeared from the debate. People are no longer asking whether a mayor has the legal authority to arrest a foreign leader. Instead, they are asking whether thousands of people will take to the streets. The legal argument faded. The political message took over. The focus moved from government power to public mobilization. And that may have been the goal from the beginning, because protests do not necessarily need to change government policy to have political impact. They create headlines. They shape public opinion. They energize supporters. They influence future debates. Visibility itself has become a form of political influence. So perhaps the most revealing part of this story is not that Mamdani changed his approach. It is how quickly the entire conversation changed with him. The debate moved away from what government officials can legally do. It moved toward what political movements can convince ordinary citizens to do. And in today's America, that distinction matters. So what does this tell us about American politics? Perhaps something much bigger than one mayoral campaign. Because this controversy is not really only about Benjamin Netanyahu. It is not even only about New York City. It is about a deeper shift in how Americans think about political leadership. For most of American history, local government and foreign policy existed in separate worlds. A mayor was judged by practical results. Did crime decrease? Did transportation improve? Did businesses succeed? Did city services work? Foreign affairs belonged to Washington. If Americans wanted to debate the Middle East, they looked to the White House, Congress, or the State Department. That boundary is becoming increasingly unclear. Today, local politicians are expected to speak on almost every major global issue, and sometimes saying nothing becomes a political statement itself. In the age of social media, every issue can become local. Every local election can become part of a national cultural battle. The result is that city governments are increasingly pulled into conflicts they have limited ability to influence. New York is a special example. It is one of the world's most international cities. Its residents come from every region of the globe. International events naturally affect conversations in communities across the city. A mayor cannot completely ignore those realities. But another question remains. Where should the boundary be? Should local leaders spend more time addressing international issues, or should they focus primarily on the daily challenges facing their residents? Americans will answer differently. Some believe leaders have a responsibility to speak on moral issues beyond their borders. Others believe voters elect mayors to manage cities, not to become global political activists. Both perspectives are part of a healthy democratic debate. But democracy also requires understanding the difference between symbolism and governing. A symbolic action can inspire people. It can express values. It can unite supporters. But governing requires something different. It requires compromise, legal limits, budget decisions, managing competing interests, making choices that affect millions of people's daily lives. Those two roles do not always lead in the same direction. And that is why this controversy has attracted so much attention. It sits directly between two competing expectations. Should political leaders focus on symbolism and values? Or should they focus on administration and results? There is no easy answer. But the question is becoming more important across democracies around the world. Because politics is no longer measured only by what leaders accomplish, it is also measured by who controls the conversation. Who dominates the news cycle? Who sets the agenda? Who creates the moment everyone is discussing? A generation ago, politicians competed to pass historic legislation. Today, they often compete to create the most memorable political moment. Sometimes it is a speech. Sometimes it is a social media post. Sometimes it is a protest movement. Whether that is good or bad depends on your perspective. Supporters argue that public demonstrations are one of democracy's most powerful tools. Critics argue that leadership should ultimately be judged by results, not attention. Both arguments contain some truth. And perhaps that is why this debate extends far beyond New York. Because it raises a fundamental question. Are political leaders becoming administrators? Or are they becoming influencers? Are campaigns increasingly about solving problems? Or about creating moments? Those questions will continue long after this controversy disappears from the headlines. As September approaches, New York will once again become the center of global attention. World leaders will arrive. Diplomats will meet. Supporters and opponents of different causes will gather. Cameras will cover the streets of Manhattan. That is normal. The real question is how political leaders choose to use that moment. Will they encourage dialogue? Will they encourage confrontation? Will they focus on governing? Or will they focus on sending a message? Ultimately, That is a choice every elected official must make. And it is also something voters should consider carefully. Because elections are not only about personalities, they are about priorities. They are about deciding what kind of leaders people want. A city manager? A political activist? A national voice? Or perhaps, in today's America, voters increasingly expect all three in one person. And that may be the biggest change of all. Thanks for watching.